Hi, I'm Devin McDonald here at OpenView Labs with Mark Organ, founding CEO of Eloqua and now founder and CEO of Influitive. So good to have you here today.
Oh, I'm happy to be here, Devin. Thanks.
So Mark, Eloqua had originally started back in 2000
That's right.
as a chat messaging app that was geared more towards financial services, insurance, and real estate.
Right.
Obviously, there was a shift. So what was that sort of light bulb moment that caused the go-to-market strategy overhaul?
Right. Well, the light bulb moment was if we didn't make a change, we'd go out of business. So
that'll do it.
But yeah, I mean, a lot of startups go through that and wonder, well, is it time for a pivot or not a pivot, right? So let's go through that. I mean, I was lucky that I had some training as a management consultant. In fact, that was the only real business experience that I had, and we learned some techniques very similar to kind of what you learn in lean startup today. You know, formulate a hypothesis, list out your assumptions, and then try to invalidate or validate those assumptions that you made. And so my experience when I was at Bain was in doing a lot of work in finance and insurance, in those two in particular. The real estate we just added because it was a nice acronym, you know, FIRE, F-I-R-E. And it so happened that our first customer was in commercial real estate, so it worked really well. But what we found with the FIs, right, was that even though the marketing people said they really wanted the product, it would be endless sales cycles, and often somebody in security or you know, the IT side would quash the sale, right? So when we looked into that, we realized, well, there's a good reason why this is happening. It's because it's not mission critical for these companies to be really great in demand generation, at least at the time. So that's why we had to pivot away from there, and we looked in the mirror and said, well, who really needs, you know, who's really desperate for lead generation and accelerating deals? Like, oh, I know, it's companies like us. Let's go and sell to companies more like ourselves. All right, so that was that one. And on the product side, what we found is just not as many people wanted to chat as we had thought would want to end up chatting. So we built an email engine to go and drive more people to go into chat, and it just turned out that what was really exciting was not the chatting, but it was the ability to follow up on a lead that was, you know, going around on a website, which the email allowed us to do. So there's a little bit of luck and serendipity there, but I think the key lesson is to formulate that hypothesis and to be really narrow about, you know, where it is that you want to focus, and be really open to the data that comes back, right? And then when adverse data comes back in, you know how to pivot. When really great data comes back in and you got lucky, right, you're also aware of that and are able to double down.
Right. So what was the time period at which, okay, FIRE is our strategy and we're going to make a shift now? Was it a year, a couple of years?
6 months.
6 months. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So really quick.
Really quick. Yeah, no, it's and I think that's the power of this approach, is that you know right away when you're going down the wrong track, or which tracks are wrong and which tracks are right, and are able to make quick moves without having ego invested in it, right? I think that's where a lot of founders go wrong, is that they have a lot of ego invested in their initial choices. And you know, the one thing I can guarantee about every business plan is it's wrong. I can't tell you where it's wrong, but I know that good chunks of it are wrong. And so I think it's important to be open to the data that's coming in, right. Both good data and adverse data, in order to quickly tack your ship to the right place.
Absolutely. Yeah. So Mark, you got your master's degree from Northwestern in neuroscience, of all things. So you clearly had a path in mind for yourself. I know I've read that you were interested in human psychology, but you ended up being a tech entrepreneur. So when did that shift occur?
Yeah, I mean, the funny thing is I've always been an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
I mean, even when I went off to graduate school, I was really quite conflicted. In fact, one of the professors that I worked with in my undergrad said, you know, you really should be an entrepreneur. But I was really fascinated with psychology and neuroscience at the time in 1996. This was the hottest area of science. I mean, maybe it still is a pretty hot area, but at the time it was entrepreneurial. It was an explosion of activity, right? You had psychologists and computer scientists and physiologists and doctors and all these people coming together to try to understand this amazing thing up here. And that's what was really exciting to me. I went to a couple of Society for Neuroscience meetings, and you had people from all over the world, you know, collaborating together, trying to solve the these problems, mysteries of the brain. I also had a sort of close family member was suffering from depression at the time, and I really wanted to try to understand a little bit more about it. And so, even though I had run businesses all through high school and in university, my parents really wanted me to be a professor. They thought that'd be cool. And at the time, I really didn't know a lot yet about disruptive entrepreneurship. The experience that I had was with, I don't know what you call it, classic entrepreneurship, right? Replicative entrepreneurship, buy low, sell high entrepreneurship, right? And which is my father's serial entrepreneur. That's the kind of entrepreneur he was. And it's not necessarily an amazing life. Like, you're still working really, really hard without having the huge payoffs. So then I went off to do my master's. At the time, the time period between 1996 and 1998 was an amazing time, transformative time for technology entrepreneurship. That's the rise of Netscape and all these amazing companies that became billion-dollar companies. And that was just a revelation for me that this was a totally different kind of entrepreneurship, right? Where you could really change the world. And that had me actually quite fired up when I was there. So I started talking to some graduate students over there and saying, what do I do? I'm really miserable as a research scientist, allergic to rats and working with rats every day. That was tough. I actually trained undergraduates to do brain surgery on rats because I couldn't spend any more time with them. So you're then being entrepreneurial there. But I asked them, well, where can I work with amazing people on exciting problems, which is what I loved about being a scientist. But where can it make more than $17,000 a year, and have the freedom to be with my girlfriend again, because the supply to demand dynamics of research are really poor. I was probably going to end up in somewhere awful, doing 4 postdocs and whatever. So I could just see that it wasn't going to be an attractive place to go. And they said, you should be a management consultant. So that's when I came back to Toronto. I really wanted to work at Bain because it was kind of one of the most entrepreneurial of the management firms. In the interview, they asked me, what do you want to do in 5 years? And I said, I don't want to be here. I'm going to be starting a company, and they hired me anyway, which is amazing. So, and they do. That's the kind of people they attract. Right. So I knew even when I was a grad student I was going to be an entrepreneur again, but I felt like I needed some seasoning. I needed some real experience and not be the kind of street fighting entrepreneur that I was as an undergrad, because this new world of tech entrepreneurship, it's not just about being full of piss and vinegar and going out there and fighting every day. You need a plan, you need strategy, you need skills. And so I felt like I'd get that, or some of that at Bain. And I was there about 20 months before I couldn't stand it anymore and went off to start a company again.
So that's actually a great segue to the next question. You had mentioned that having an ego as an entrepreneur or CEO can be really detrimental to your business. You have to be willing to say, you know what, we had a hypothesis, the hypothesis was not correct, we need to shift. What are some other qualities that you think are really important in a successful entrepreneur?
That's such a great question, because the ego thing's a really double-edged sword, right? And so there's a real kind of yin and yang to the founder. And I'm going to speak more specifically about the hustler, non-technical founder, because that's me. And so on one level, you have to be devoid of ego to the point where you continually surround yourself with better and better people who can, who have more talent than yourself, be able to change direction, be able to be a true servant leader, and not be a dictator, right? And not all founders are able to do that. A lot of founders do that because they want to be in control. And I do have a high D and high dominance in my personality, but I think it is important to subordinate yourself to the greater good of the company, and not everyone makes that shift. On the other hand, you have to have the confidence in yourself to power through all the challenges that happen. If you think about it, right, it's a remarkable thing to be a technology entrepreneur, like a high growth technology entrepreneur. you basically have to discover something that nobody else has discovered. You have to be the ultimate contrarian, right? So how do you go in one direction where everybody else in the entire world is going in the other direction? Like, that's a really hard thing to do, right? And so you think, well, that's a high ego thing, right? And it is. And so for me, I think what the bridge is between those two things is that one's really narrow focus about what you want to do so that you can learn at a very deep level how that market works. And that way, you can have the confidence as an entrepreneur to go your own way because you have the deep knowledge. You've done the work that no other entrepreneur has been willing to do. And so I think, so the first thing I think is this duality of having very high confidence in oneself, but at the same time, not a damaging ego, the ability to subordinate your own needs to the needs of the company. So I think that's one. The need to learn continually. I can't emphasize that enough, right? Curiosity about how the world really works, to be able to ask those 5 questions, why, right? And to keep going because you really want to discover the right answer. And to always be learning and upgrading skills, right? Particularly on the human side of things, right? So, management and leadership skills, I mean, I guess you can read lots of books about it, but I don't think you could ever know enough about people and how to get the most out of people. And so I think it's continual learning is critical. I spend a lot of time, whether it's networking with people, reading books and blogs and whatever, at least 20% of my week is actually spent 20%. Learning. And continuing to evolve myself. I would say that as a non-technical founder, it's important to be charming. What do I mean by that? So not charming in like the George Clooney sense, which is good because I don't have that particular quality. My wife reminds me sometimes. But you need to attract people, right? And people are attracted by honesty and transparency and hard work ethic and authenticity. A big part of the job of founder is to attract the best employees, even investors, right? Investors like to talk all about metrics, particularly here at OpenView. They love to talk about metrics. But at the end of the day, people make decisions on people. And I think even if it's subconscious, they're like, am I attracted to this person or not? Is this someone I want to work with? Is this a person that I feel I can learn from, that I want to spend time with? So I think, and those are skills that can be learned, right? Those are skills that you can learn how to speak better in public, how to network more effectively, right? How to connect people, right? All those attractive qualities, I think, are things that can be learned. So.
But you have to have that curiosity to be able to even start learning and encourage yourself to get better in those areas.
For sure, and curiosity is really attractive, right? Last time you gone to a cocktail party and you had heard somebody and they talk about themselves all the time? Probably not that interesting, right? But that person who's really curious, genuinely cared about you, really wanted to understand more about your life, that was probably somebody you really enjoyed spending time with, right? So I think that the charm and curiosity and learning, they actually all go together as part of the constellation of traits that I think are important for founders. What I like about your question is starting it off with the ego thing, and how do you do both? How do you maintain high self-confidence, but at the same time it's not all about you, right? Which to me is the essence of being a founder. Yeah, no, that's a great question, and I wish I knew what I was experiencing when I was in it. Yeah. And I guess that's the point of these videos, right? That are great, is you get to look back and because at the time, being frankly, we were just trying to get to the next quarter. Eloqua was pretty unique in that we were a bootstrapped company, well into the expansion and probably into the growth phase. We were not able, first we're not able to raise capital, then we didn't want it. We were actually growing 70% out of cash flow during the expansion phase. Well, one of the things is that we did decide to raise capital after being cash flow positive for 14 quarters in a row. And so the reason why we did that is that we could start to see the market growth accelerating. Right? That means the second derivative was increasing, right? That's an unusual thing, right? So we saw that all of a sudden it seemed like everybody was talking about demand generation and marketing automation. And we started to get into budgets that was never possible before. To me, that was the biggest difference between expansion stage and growth stage. So in the expansion stage, again, we were a category creating company. That's a little different from someone who's just a company that is just taking existing concept and changing it a little bit. But to me, expansion phase was about product market fit. We had achieved fit, right? We had a product that fit a market need pretty well. The pricing kind of worked, and we had the beginnings of a replicatable revenue engine. But there were still no budgets. We still had to manufacture that, right? I still go to these companies here in Boston, and we'd have to sell the vision, right, of this form of marketing, that you could have a measurable and repeatable process for generating demand. At the time, it was kind of a bit of a crazy idea, right? But we were able to manufacture essentially those budgets, and that we got to fit. Then around 2005, that was about 5 years after we started the company, we started to get into RFPs. All the analysts started to cover the space. We started getting calls from Australia and Germany, like other weird places that we never spent any time in, right? And that's where I got the feeling that the market's quickening, right? And it means that if that demand is there will be other companies that will be able to soak up that demand. And if we don't grow fast, because I know the nature of software, it is a bit winner take all, right? Or at least the top two end up with most of the market. So I knew that we would be in deep yogurt if we were not able to expand quickly to meet that market demand, right? Some high-flying Silicon Valley company would raise way more money than us and know how to deploy that capital very efficiently. So that's when we decided to raise money and build a truly professional organization. We built a whole BD function to work with other companies that we didn't have before. Really built out that marketing team, hired a professional CFO. I mean, those sorts of things, because we could see that this was going to be a big market, and it was going to transform from the little kind of early hobby market that us and ExactTarget, another OpenView company, participated in, and it was going to go big time.
Were there any particular marketing strategies that you remember in helping you create that category?
Sure.
So many of our investments and even prospect companies are in a similar position where they're trying to create their own category.
Right.
Was there something in there, like that defining sort of moment, that really kind of helped your customers understand, wow, there is a huge need here and we need to invest in something like this?
We took thought leadership very, very seriously at Eloqua. And so this is probably the only useful thing I got out of my academic background. Okay, the one thing that academics do extraordinarily well, at least the good ones, and I worked with good ones, is they're really good at coming up with unique ideas. And the reason why is that if your idea is not unique, you can waste years of your life and not get a single paper published as a result. So you better be good at coming up with unique ideas. And so we used to have these meetings. We called them intellectual capital development meetings, ICD. We'd bring lots of people in from the company every month to discuss, okay, what are the new exciting ideas that have been percolating? What are some new use cases that are going on with the product? What are some of the craziest customers we have? What are they doing these days? And we would pick one or two big ideas, and we would work with them. And if you look even today, Eloqua still has some white papers written in 2005 that are still there. They are still on the website. They are still good. It's pretty awesome. So I think as part of being a category creator is that you lead as much or even more so with your ideas than you do with your technology. But most companies don't really spend a lot of time developing powerful, unique ideas the way that you would if you were an academic. So we employed the exact same process that I learned as a graduate student. So I think that was big. Advocacy was big. I mean, it's actually where I got the idea for what is now Influitive was in trying to figure this out at Eloqua. And the one thing that worked unbelievably well was that we created like an Academy Awards for marketing. And because we wanted to shine a light on this category of quantitative and process-oriented marketing, right? So we created an Academy Awards for it. We called the Markies. We even hired the same company that produced the trophies for the Academy Awards.
Yeah.
If you look at it, it's a guy with ring. You look at it, it's the same company. So we made it super posh, we wore tuxedos, and it was huge. It was huge for helping to create the category because all those people started buzzing about it. And actually, I wrote that down and say, there's something huge here, and I won't be able to work on it at this company, but next time I want to drive more into this idea of getting your customers to essentially, the users, to create the category for you. And that's one of the big insights that I have, is that the category is really not so much created by a marketing department. I mean, there are things you can do to foster it, but the category is actually created by your customers and users themselves. In our case, it was these really special people who looked at marketing differently, right? And these are people that, the OpenView folks are going to know really well. So I know I've known, Scott Maxwell from the very early days of Eloqua, and he was excited by the same ideas, right? Of these people that looked at marketing not as a bunch of arts and crafts, but were extremely, metric driven and process oriented. Those are the people who define the category for us. We just shone a light on it and used other people, our advocates and influencers, to essentially develop that.
Right, exactly. So it sounds like a lot of the tactics and strategies you learned at Eloqua, you're now deploying with Influitive.
That's right. Yeah, that's.
And actually built a whole product around it, which is amazing. What
Thanks.
Other, in addition to sort of the customer advocacy, what sort of commonalities do you see between yourself as a CEO of Eloqua versus now what you're doing with Influitive?
Yeah, that's a good question. I was really lucky that after I left Eloqua, I got introduced to a great CEO, Brett Hurt, who was founder and CEO of Core Metrics and then CEO of Bazaar Voice. And at the time, I had lots of ideas of things I wanted to pursue. And one thing he encouraged me very strongly was to focus on the same customers that I had won before, which is exactly what he did at Bazaar Voice. He just focused on the 20% of his product that drove 80% of the value. Encouraged me to do the same thing. So what have I learned? I mean, I am still focused on the same types of companies and people that I know really well. The same kinds of marketers and particularly from B2B tech companies. And in some ways we're just kind of selling them a new and better mousetrap that did a lot of the same things that Eloqua did, just using different tools and technology. So whereas Eloqua helped generate more demand and generate leads and nurture leads by using email and using website tracking, we feel that was ideal in that era, and things have changed, right? The social web has changed the way that buyers buy. And now that same kind of nurturing can and should be done by peers. That's who buyers want to interact with. So I'm still, that core idea of nurturing people, I've taken from Eloqua and brought to Influitive. It's just that we're nurturing different kinds of people. Another big idea I think that was successful at Eloqua was to shine a light on these special people, right? And so at Eloqua, the special people were these marketers who we've talked about before. The insight that we had at Influitive is that the special people that we focus on are the advocates themselves, right? And that's one of the things that none of the other companies that are out doing word of mouth is not a new idea, right? But one of the things that I found is that no one's really focusing on these people and what drives them to do more activity. And so the idea of elevating and celebrating a super niche person, a niche category of people, to make them feel like super people, I think is a really important idea. It's a key part of category creation. For me, I think that's where categories come from. It comes from these special people who you as founder might feel that one day they'll be much more numerous than they are today. Right? So that idea I've taken with me. There are a lot of things that I learned as well along the way. I've always been a very customer-focused person. Right? So at Eloqua, I spent lots and lots of time with customers. I learned too late about the importance of people and the importance of hiring, not just hiring the best people, but basically nurturing the employee base. I learned it too late, and so it's one of the things I spend a lot more time on now at Influitive. it's the people that you hire that make the customers happy, either through great service or building great product. So that's one of the big changes that I've made, is a big change in my time allocation, towards employees. Yeah, I mean, I think about this a lot. I mean, there's a reason why I'm in the advocate marketing space. I do feel that the future of marketing is customers. That doesn't sound revolutionary, but the question is, where do buyers want to spend their time? I have a really simple hypothesis for my career, right? I'm just going to build products that help marketers be where the buyers are. It's not rocket science. And so, buyers these days want to interact with knowledgeable peers, whether it's online or whether it's offline. And so I think that whereas today a lot of companies are not taking their advocacy processes seriously, they'll have a referral program and a reference program, and they'll have another unit over here that is working on getting customer stories and that sort of thing.
Just kind of checking boxes.
Exactly. It's not a process, right, that has real metrics and accountability and strategy and board visibility and all that kind of stuff. That is all changing, right? So we're seeing that with our early adopter customers, that advocacy is a critical process in a company. Think about, for example, open source software companies where they don't call it advocacy, they call it their community who builds their own software. It is a core process, right? It's got visibility, again, all the way to the board. Everyone's accountable for metrics. That is the way that advocacy is going to go in marketing, and it has to. It has to, because the way that people buy is changing. So marketing needs to change along with it. So I do predict in a few years, every company is going to have somebody that is doing advocate marketing. I think that's big. I think big data is absolutely data is completely changing the process of marketing, and I think where it started in B2C, it's now heading into B2B as well, where I think that marketers are going to get more and more quantitative. We're seeing more and more marketing leaders that have a full team of developers that just work with them. We're
data scientists of the world.
Absolutely, yeah. So we're a B2B company with 54 people. We have a growth team. We have 4 people in growth. We have a full-time data scientist, and we're not a big company, right? And newer companies. So, for example, my co-founders from Eloqua, who started a new company called Nudge Software, they're a team of 8, and they've got 3 data scientists, something like that, right? So it's that's where marketing, and I think even some of your sales too, is going in that direction of needing that. The future is mobile. You got prospects are carrying these computers around with them everywhere they go. I think companies need to take advantage of that. You still see a lot of marketing that doesn't actually take advantage of that idea, right? So, but yeah, those are some of the things. But yeah, no, I'm definitely very excited about where advocacy is going in marketing. I think it's a really big deal, and yeah, I'm excited to be here and tell the story.
Seems like some great predictions.
Thanks.
So thank you so much for joining us here today. We really appreciate you taking time out of your schedule.
My pleasure.
Share your insights.
Awesome. Thanks.
Thanks, Mark.